Okay, so I'm back again with another movie review. Uh, so I just got done. I'm literally fresh off from watching the 4 hour long Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Like, literally, I just got done watching it a couple minutes ago. Um, Holy shit. That's all I gotta say. Uh, I had high expectations going into this movie, but my expectations were completely shattered. I knew I knew that it was going to be different. I knew it was going to be improved, but I didn't think it was going to be that improved. I mean, I expected it to be good, improved from the original film, but Zack Snyder just straight up said fuck it and did a complete overhaul here and made it closer to how he visioned what the film should have been. I'm going to keep this as spoiler free as possible for those who have never watched it. Although, to be fair, a lot of you have seen the 2017 Justice League movie. So if you've seen the 2017 film, then you're probably familiar with what happens in the plot of Justice League. How, Bruce and Diana are trying to assemble a group of superheroes to combat against Steppenwolf and his army of parademons who are after the three mother boxes. But like I said, there's a lot of things in this movie that I do want to discuss. But first, let me give a non-spoiler review real quick, just so that way I can get it out of the way. And then anything that's spoiler related, I'll discuss in the other half of this video. So, but yeah, as I said, the premise of the film is that there is a threat that's coming to Earth, involving not only Steppenwolf, unlike in the original. Darkseid is actually in this movie, so just throwing that out there. It's him, Steppenwolf, and Steppenwolf is basically, he serves Darkseid. And they're after the three mother boxes on Earth. And in this movie, Batman and Wonder Woman are trying to assemble a team of superheroes in order to eviscerate the threat. What I really loved about this movie was not only the fact that Zack Snyder came back to finish what he started, but also the fact that he dedicated this film to his daughter, who unfortunately passed away a couple years back during the initial production of Justice League, and he had to step away from the project as a result of that. And because he did that, director Joss Whedon was hired to finish the rest of the film, but he was uncredited as the director. He reshot a lot of things, and and what happened was that he made that movie have a lighter tone and had more humor in it, and it just came off as very forced. But in Justice League, some of the humorous moments mostly came from Barry Allen, which is fine because he's known for being a very hilarious character in the comics, but also when there were hilarious moments in the Snyder Cut, they weren't forced. They came naturally. You know what I mean? But in the original cut, Whedon just thought that by making it having a brighter tone was going to help it, and no, it didn't. There was also a lot of problems with the 2017 movie that I do want to discuss. Why it's so different from why they're so different from each other. Well, like I said, even though the formula of the story is very much the same as the original film, there was a lot of thought that went into it. Like, for example, there's a lot of important scenes in the movie. The reason why it's 4 hours long is because there's a lot of important scenes that were missing from the original film. For one thing, characters like Cyborg and the Flash had a lot more lore in this movie, to the point where we can buy in to their characters. Like, I will discuss that in a little bit. I will discuss their character arcs in a little bit. Like I said, I don't want to share it since I'm basically not going to spoil the film for anyone. But we'll discuss that later. But on the other hand, there was also a lot of scenes involving the main villain, Steppenwolf. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he has a lot more character in this cut than he did in the original, because like in the original, it just felt like he was just there to be an adversary to the Justice League. But here, there's a legitimate reason for why he's here. And, you know, the fact that there's a greater evil than him that's behind all of this makes it all the more logical. You know what I mean? Like, the way the film is structured is that it's a lot more cohesive. The one thing I don't like that people are complaining about this film is the fact that it's 4 hours long. I feel like, considering that that's the direction Zack Snyder was going in with this film, it was very much necessary. It was either that or just spend copious amounts of money, you know, making solo films for every single character, which wouldn't be fair because, first of all, Superman and Batman have been around for ages. There's been several different versions of both characters to the point where you should already know who these characters are, and if you don't, then I hate you. Anyway, I'm just kidding. Basically, if you really want to know about the lore of Batman and Superman, this is what you do. Watch the 1989 Batman movie or the Dark Knight trilogy. It doesn't really matter which. Either one will give you a good idea of how the Dark Knight is. As far as Superman goes, either watch the 1978 Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, and even though it's an okay movie, it may not be the best, but if you want to understand Superman's story arc in the DCU, then Man of Steel would be the way to go. But I would mostly recommend the classic Superman from 1978, only because it just does the Superman character a lot better. But that's just me, though. That's just me. So, keeping all of this in mind, Aquaman. What about him? The reason how come we were able to go into this movie, right? You know, we continued to go into this movie, but here's the thing. Aquaman already had his solo film, which was released in 2018, approximately a year, I'd say, after the original cut. It actually takes the difference here, though. The difference here is that the solo Aquaman movie takes place after the events of Justice League. So some people might be confused when they watch this film because they may think that, oh, well, maybe this takes place, you know, I don't know, you know, we don't know when this movie takes place. Does it take place before Aquaman or after? Because when you watch Justice League, the only spoiler I'm going to give right now is the fact that, you know, Aquaman and Mera are not together. You know, everyone knows who's read the comics that Aquaman and Mera's relationship is one of the most important storylines in the comic book lore. So, you know, the fact that, the fact that they're not together in this movie may raise more than a few eyebrows. However, as I said before, Jason Momoa, the actor who played Aquaman in this movie, did say that Aquaman, the solo film, takes place after the events of Justice League. Just to make that very clear. Zack Snyder, the director of this movie, because his name is pretty much on the fucking name of the movie, he also said that this version of Justice League doesn't share the same continuity as the Whedon's version. In fact, you'll notice that there were scenes from the original cut of Justice League that were cut out in the Zack Snyder version. But as I said, we'll discuss those later. But as I said, the one thing I loved is the fact that the characterization was done a lot better. Like, you know, there's an acceptable lore with Aquaman, the Flash, and my favorite of the film, Cyborg. Cyborg, in my opinion, probably had the best character arc. Even though Wonder Woman's my favorite superhero, in the DC universe, the thing is that, you know, if you saw Batman v Superman and Wonder Woman, you pretty much already know who she is. But with Cyborg, he's just now being brought in. Like, you know, first impressions are important. It was difficult for him to make a first impression initially because of the direction Joss Whedon decided to go into. But with Cyborg, though, his backstory is indeed the heart of the film. He is probably like one of the most relatable characters in here. You might watch him and think that he's unlikable at first, but you gotta realize that he had been through a lot in his life, so he comes across as a very sympathetic character. As for the Flash, he's also sympathetic as well, even though his lore isn't as heartfelt as Cyborg's. You know, Barry Allen's reason for being in this movie is also pretty good. It was done pretty well. Like the fact that, you know, Zack Snyder took his time to give these characters actual lore so that the audience could get behind them is precisely what we needed in the original film. Like literally, that's what we needed. Like I said, there was a lot of important pieces of the story that was all in this movie that was missing in the original cut. My overall opinion really is that this is a huge improvement over the original version. I'll even go so far as to say that this movie is one of the greatest superhero films in the past decade. And I'll even go so far as to say I think it's the best superhero film of the current decade, of the 2020s. Like, I'm being that serious. You wanna know how serious I am? I actually like this movie better than I liked Avengers Endgame. Oh my god, here comes the dislikes, here comes the hate. Let me explain my reasons, because I have my reasons. First and foremost, let's get this out of the way so that way no one attacks me. I loved Avengers Endgame. I thought it was an amazing conclusion to a story arc that took over, I'd say, about maybe 14, 15 years to tell. It took 22 films for the Avengers arc to come to a complete end. The only thing that turned me off about Endgame is the fact that it had a very predictable ending. Now, it being predictable isn't a bad thing, because just because it's predictable doesn't automatically mean it sucks. For one thing, the performances of the actors in that movie was great, and there were a lot of twists and turns in the movie that we wasn't expecting. You know what I mean? Like, for example, you know, I'm sure you've watched it already by this point. Spoiler alert: the deaths of Black Widow and Iron Man. It's not even so much of as a spoiler because almost everyone has seen it already, so they know what I'm talking about. But yeah, the deaths of Black Widow and Iron Man being the few examples. You know, it was certain. It was like, at the same time though, we knew that someone was going to die though. That's the thing. But the way that the story was structured made it so where the audience was kept at the edge of their seats to the point where they would question whether or not if they were actually going to follow, if the movie was going to follow through with the deaths of these beloved characters, which, well, they did. Avengers Endgame was definitely one hell of a film, but I don't think, as great as it was, I don't think it's one of the best superhero films ever made, in my personal opinion, because there were other superhero films I thought were more unique and more refreshing and more, I guess you could say, impactful. The only thing that Endgame does is that it just ends the story. You know, it just ends the Infinity Saga. That's all it really does. But it doesn't do anything. It doesn't really do anything new and unique that other superhero films haven't done. The Zack Snyder's Justice League, on the other hand, has done something completely different. When you watch this movie, you'll be surprised that the aspect ratio is not the same like your usual movie. The aspect ratio is actually in a 4:3, which is basically standard definition type aspect. Still in HD clarity, don't get me wrong, but the aspect ratio is just a regular square rather than being in widescreen. This is actually one of the most interesting moves that Zack Snyder has ever done, considering that films have not been released in this format for decades. So the fact that he went in this style made it arguably the most unique superhero film to ever come out in forever. You also have the fact that it's also one of the longest, if not the longest, superhero film ever made. Like, even way more than the Avengers did. Not only that, but it's also R-rated. You know, the trend of superhero films going R-rated has actually gotten super popular, mostly because of the success of Deadpool. Because even though there were some other superhero films that were R-rated at the time, they weren't very successful. But when Deadpool first came out, it proved that R-rated superhero films can work. So every company has tried doing it every now and then. Like, they've been trying it. And in Zack Snyder's Justice League, that's one thing you're probably going to like about this movie is that it is indeed R-rated. It's very violent. There's not as much there's the only thing that you probably are going to be asking me is, well, how's the language? Well, there is language in the movie, but definitely not as much as you would think it would be. It definitely does not focus on language at all. The real reason it's R-rated is because it's to allow the violence, because the violence in this movie is pretty excessive. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the violence here is a lot more authentic than I've ever seen in a Avengers movie. You know what I mean? Like, some people will probably come under the impression that most of the DC live action movies are like for the adults and everything. And I can see why that is, because it has a darker tone when you really think about it. And not only that, but if you've read some of the older DC comics, like the Batman the Killing Joke, you probably already know that a majority of DC's comic books were very violent, especially the ones in the Golden Age where Batman used to kill people all the time. So, yeah, DC is known for being very excessive when it comes to violence. So, Justice League being R-rated is really not that much of a surprise, if I'm being thoroughly honest with you. But my overall opinion on Zack Snyder's Justice League is that this is a movie that I highly recommend you watch, but under very specific conditions. Like, if you're one of those people that can't stand for up to 4 hours watching a movie, then I would merely suggest splitting up into parts. The thing is that this movie is split up into, I'd say, 7 parts. There's parts 1 through 6, and then there's the epilogue. So there's 7 parts in the movie altogether. Well, actually, there's 6 parts plus an epilogue is basically what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? So with that in mind, if you can't watch this movie in its full entirety, that's 100% fine. Just watch part 1. Like, you can watch them in an episodic fashion, because originally that's what this film was going to be. It was going to be released in the form of episodes, but then they decided not to do that and just release it as a whole, you know, so that way you can get the full story just right off the bat. You know what I mean? So, you know, the fact that they, I think the fact that they did that was actually the best move, because if they kept it in episodes, I feel like some people would probably get turned off by it after a while. I mean, I don't know how it would have turned out, but I think them releasing it as a 4-hour film was a good decision, in my opinion. I know that there's a vast majority of people who hates the fact that this film is 4 hours long, but I'm very much clearly in the minority. So I also cannot wait for the Justice League game that's also going to be out soon, because I actually did hear something about a Justice League game supposedly being released in the future. It's going to be something similar to like games like Spider-Man and stuff like that. But that's just a little fun piece of trivia for those who don't know, is that I do know that there's supposed to be a Justice League game on the horizon. But with that in mind, that aside, Zack Snyder's Justice League was an amazing movie. It fixed everything that was wrong with the 2017 film. You know, compared to the 2017 film, which had a much lighter tone, this one decided to take itself seriously, because when you really think about it, it is pretty serious. And some of the lighthearted moments in the movie were not forced, but rather they were part of that specific character and everything. And when those lighthearted moments did come up, it happened at the precise time. The plot was always constantly on the move. It knew where it was going. It took its time. It didn't rush it, but it also didn't drag on for an infinity. So it knew exactly what it was doing. And as I said, the characters are so much better in this movie than they were in the original cut. Ben Affleck's demeanor as Batman is incredible in this movie. I remember he actually regretted the fact, he was actually very apologetic because of how Batman v Superman turned out, because everyone hated it. But honestly, I don't blame him for that, because like, Ben Affleck is a really, really good actor. Like, I can honestly say that from an unbiased standpoint. He's a really talented guy, but he can only do so much with a very poor script. You know what I mean? But here, I feel like Zack Snyder brought out the best, or at least showed us the best of Ben Affleck as Batman. Like, when he's Bruce Wayne, he's still that same philanthropic playboy that he's always been. You know what I mean? But he's still good at heart. But when he's Batman, he's just straight up badass. Like, I honestly say all you want about Ben Affleck, but But Ben's demeanor when he's Batman is incredible. Like he clearly understands the character. I mean, this is an actor who has had experience playing superheroes. I mean, this guy was originally Daredevil at one point. I know that not a whole lot of people liked him as Daredevil, but he still played a superhero before. And honestly, he wasn't as much of an established actor at that time like he is now. So I would say it was just him kind of developing his skills. And evidently, he's probably at the prime of his career, really, especially when it comes to Batman and everything. And I know that when honestly, when I heard that he stepped down from the role, I was very upset, because I feel like he's really amazing as this character. I always believed he was a good Batman, but at the same time I understood his reasons, because he had personal issues that he wanted to sort out before he got back on screen and everything. And honestly, I do hope, I'm not even sure if he'll ever come across this video, but if he does, I really hope he's doing very well, and I hope he's very happy with his life, and let's hope he returns as Batman for another film. In fact, I would love for that to happen. Now, as far as Gal Gadot goes, do I even need to say it? I mean, Wonder Woman is my favorite DC superhero. Seeing Gal Gadot understanding the character is something I straight up expected. Like, first and foremost, the 2017 Wonder Woman movie is one of my all-time favorite superhero films because of how unique it is, giving the females mostly the spotlight. There was very few men that had a lot of screen time, except for characters like Steve Trevor, who was played by Chris Pine. But Gal Gadot, for the most part, like, she just understands this character, and she not once have I ever gotten bored with her in this movie. It's like any DC movie with Wonder Woman in it has my interest pretty much, because I just really love this character. Like, she's strong. It's like, it's not even so much to the fact that she's a woman, but like, she's strong. She has an amazing lore and everything, and she's not she's not overpowered like Superman. She does have her weaknesses, but at the same time, she's very powerful. And she's overall, she just has an amazing character arc, if I'm being honest with you. That's why most people's favorite are usually characters like Batman or Superman, but for me, Wonder Woman is definitely my favorite, because I just think she has the best character arc of the main three superheroes from DC. But that's not to discount many of the other ones. Like, for one thing, Aquaman, played by Jason Momoa, like, he is absolutely incredible. You know what I mean? Like, first and foremost, I loved him in Aquaman. Seeing him in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but this time he's taken more seriously, was the best direction Zack Snyder ever gone. It's like in Joss Whedon's version of the film, they made him a joke. You know what I mean? Like, but here, he's actually so much better. Like, his characterization is so much better. Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, also known as The Flash, do I even need to say it? He was the comic relief character of the film, but at the same time, he was still a character who knew how to get shit done. So it wasn't like he was just a character who just cracked up hilarious lines. Like, this dude knew how to get shit done. Now, Ray Fisher as Cyborg, otherwise known as Victor Stone, oh my god. If this dude does not get nominated for Best Supporting Actor or whatever for his portrayal as Victor Stone in this movie, I will be amazingly surprised, because Ray Fisher is just so damn good here. Like, this dude has so much talent, if I'm being completely honest with you. The way his character arc works in this movie is just incredible, and the way he portrays this character brings Victor to life. You know what I mean? Like I said, he's the most relatable out of the bunch, like in the Justice League. You're pretty much gonna love all the characters, really, when you watch this movie. So I would say give it a watch. You can easily watch it on HBO Max, because that's where it's at right now, exclusively in America. So as far as I'm concerned, I believe that's the only place where you can watch it. Eventually, I'm pretty sure it's going to be released all around, maybe even other versions of the film potentially. But for now, it's exclusive on HBO Max. So if you are subscribed to HBO Max, you can literally just turn on the film and watch it with no problem, which is literally what I did. So definitely give this a watch. Now, after about 25 minutes of me giving my thoughts on the film, now it's time to talk about the spoilers, because the reason why is because I'm going to be bringing up differences from this movie versus the original, because I have seen the original. So if you don't want to watch this part of the video, feel free to click away now, and make sure you leave a like on this video and subscribe if you enjoyed it. And if you are planning to watch this movie, definitely watch it soon enough, and definitely give your thoughts in the comments below, and then come right back to this video to hear the other half of this video, because the other half of this video is going to be the spoilers, because I'm going to be explaining some of the differences to the best of my knowledge. It's been forever since I've seen the original film, but I'm still going to give it my all here. So I'm not going to discuss the story in great detail, because that's not really my thing, but I'll try to sum it up in the simplest way, shape, or form. But basically, Darkseid, let's see, we got Darkseid and his legion of parademons. They all want to conquer Earth by using the combined energies of the 3 mother boxes. You see, there was a whole war that happened thousands of years ago with the Olympian gods, the Amazons, the Atlanteans, and the humans, and the assistants from the Green Lanterns, were able to defeat Darkseid and his parademons and keep them from getting the mother boxes. But the mother boxes, however, even though they were separated, what happened was that the Amazons, the Atlanteans, and the gods pretty much like separated the mother boxes and threw them around all different places on Earth to make it so where Darkseid and the parademons could not access them, because they know that if Darkseid ever got a hold of these mother boxes, that hell would be unleashed on Earth. You know what I mean? So one of Darkseid's servants, Steppenwolf, is tasked with acquiring the 3 motherboards so that Darkseid can have his vengeance. But you see, it's not easy for him. Why is that? Because Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince are setting up a team of metahumans to eviscerate the threat. They go through characters like Arthur Curry, otherwise known as Aquaman, Barry Allen, otherwise known as The Flash, and then you have Victor Stone, otherwise known as Cyborg. The way they recruit these teams is also really unique. Like the way Bruce tries to get Arthur to join was pretty interesting, because Arthur wanted no part of the team originally, but then when Bruce meets up with Barry Allen, because Barry Allen's basically a fan, he was like, yeah, I'll definitely join in. Like literally just no problem. He was like, I'm in. And then when it came to Victor Stone, this is the interesting part here, is that Diana was the one who located Victor Stone and convinced him to join the team. And what I liked about this is that Diana and Victor had some similarities in that they both have lost people that they've cared about, to the point where they shut themselves off from the rest of the world, but she had to overcome her grief. And even during the events of the film, she flat out admits that she was still trying to work on her grief. And at some point, Victor Stone came to an understanding and decided to join the group as a result of Diana's understanding. Because these two have been in similar situations, Diana obviously she understands Victor better than how potentially Bruce probably would have understood him. Well, maybe that might be a little bit of a stretch, because Bruce did lose people that he cared about, his parents, but everyone knows about that. I also love the fact that even though Commissioner Gordon didn't have too many scenes in this movie, he's only been in maybe 2 or 3 throughout the whole movie. He has been given more screen time here than he did in the original Justice League cut, if I'm being honest. And then what else we have? It's funny, I'm fresh off from watching the movie, but sometimes I don't even remember stuff. That's just my memory just being very foggy. So just bear with me for a sec, y'all. It was a 4-hour long movie after all. So I'm trying to cram all that into my head. So they all get together, and what they also do is that, much like in the original cut, they use one of the mother boxes to revive Superman. And when he does, Superman goes apeshit at first, but then when he sees Lois Lane, his memory starts to jog back, because his relationship with her is one of the most, if not the most important thing in his life, because, well, love, I guess. So his memory comes back, and he's finally Clark Kent again. And he knows that he was, and there was also a couple of scenes with Superman in this movie that was missing in the original cut that would at least explain why he appears in the final battle against Steppenwolf and the Parademons. He reunites with his mother Martha, and then there's even a scene where Superman meets with Alfred, which was not in the original cut at all. So with all of that in mind, it gave us a reason to know why Superman joins the fight, and he does, because much like in the original cut, Superman does not appear in the movie until near the end of the film. I would say, since there's like 6 parts, yeah, he doesn't appear in the film until I'd say roughly part 5. I'd say, roughly part 5, yeah, which is close to the end of the movie. So if you're expecting to see Superman throughout this movie, you're going to be disappointed by that, because he only appears in the film starting from part 5. But that's good, though, because that only makes his presence all the more special. That's the thing. I feel like because, Superman doesn't spend a good majority of the time in this movie, that it made his presence all the more special. Same thing with Darkseid. Darkseid, despite being the one who's basically responsible for pretty much the events of the film, really, his presence was also very prestigious because his screen time wasn't oversaturated. You know what I mean? Like, he only appeared in scenes where they were very important, and when it did, you knew that Darkseid meant business. He wasn't fucking around. And that was the best move that Zack Snyder had done. It was keeping Darkseid's presence to a very specific extent. Same thing with Superman, which is why when they do appear on screen, it makes their appearance all the more special, especially since they can focus on the main characters, pretty much the 5 main characters in the movie. And that's not to say that Superman isn't a main character, but, since Superman is basically the highest regarded of the bunch, you got to realize he's one of the most popular superheroes of all time, probably even the most popular superhero. They want to keep his presence special. I still think it was interesting that they revived Superman the way they did in this movie, because in the original version of this storyline, when Superman fought Doomsday, yes, Superman did die, not legitimately, but he did die in the fight against Doomsday, because Doomsday was just extremely fucking powerful. But here's the thing. There was a comic book issue that revealed that Superman actually never died. He was actually in a coma. However, the reason why people thought he was dead was because his heart rate was so low that it was undetectable. But he was very much alive the whole time. Here in the movie, however, in the movie version, they just decided Superman should just straight up die. But they knew they was, but because this is Superman we're talking about, obviously he wasn't gonna stay dead forever. Like, he was gonna come back in some form. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's what's interesting. That I really like that. But yeah, the action scenes in this movie are actually really great. Like I said, the violence in here is just very, very gruesome, especially at the end, where after a long and brutal fight, where Cyborg tries to, where Cyborg basically tries to, I'm trying to remember what it was called in the movie, where, because they, spoiler alert, I mean, this is a spoiler review at this point, Steppenwolf managed to acquire all 3 of the mother boxes, so Cyborg had to come in and prevent any use of this, any use of the box. They had to separate it, basically. I think it was to form the Unity, I believe. Yeah, the Unity, that's what it was called, the Unity. It took a while for it to come to me. So because of that, they were able to form the Unity, right? So what they had to do was that Cyborg basically had to get inside the Unity and pretty much destroy the mother boxes. But at first they failed, but Barry had to enter the Speed Force and reverse time, just so that way Superman and Victor can separate the 3 mother boxes. by pretty much eviscerating Steppenwolf's plan. And after that, they successfully defeat Steppenwolf. Arthur stabs him, and then, I shit you not, my favorite superhero, Diana, or Wonder Woman, straight up cuts this motherfucker's head off. Like, I'm not even kidding you. She straight up chops Steppenwolf's head off. Like, bro, I'm glad that they did this. I'm glad that they did this. Like, the fact that they amped up the violence like this to make it so where it mimics, like, how it is in the comics. You know what I mean? Like, I just love the fact that they did that. Like, it looks super badass. And to anyone who says that superheroes don't kill, I don't know what to tell you here. I don't know what to tell you here. But I'll put it to you this way. At least they're doing it for the greater good. That's the difference. They're doing it for the greater good. So, I don't know what to tell you. So anyway, so because the plan failed, as far as using the 3 mother boxes, Darkseid has a plan B. Even though Steppenwolf has been defeated and the 3 mother boxes have been destroyed, Darkseid has a plan that he will return to Earth so that way he can complete his quest for the anti-life equation. It was actually set up during the backstory during the war for the mother boxes, actually, as far as I'm concerned. Basically, if you don't know what the anti-life equation is, basically it's like the formula for where how do I describe it? Basically, if Darkseid was to have hold of the anti-life equation, he would essentially have complete control over the minds of everyone. So he could essentially turn them into parademons, in a way. So that's how it would work. He can use this as a way of conquering the planet, especially since he flat out admits in this movie that he took over 100,000 worlds. So yeah, Darkseid is definitely a force to be reckoned with. And that's another thing we gotta discuss. Darkseid was incredible. Like, this dude was straight up badass from the moment of seeing him. Like, his voice is so deep. Like, it's like, dude, Darkseid is super scary. Like, I'm not even kidding you, dude. It would be difficult not to shit your pants at this guy. I'll even go as far to say I find him more threatening than I find Thanos. Thanos, at least in a way, has a motive. He's not the most terrifying looking villain ever. I mean, his actions does make him intimidating, don't get me wrong. Like, but the reason I like Darkseid, though, like, is because he will stop at nothing to complete his quests. He will literally stop at nothing. That's the difference here. And as far as character designs go, Darkseid is definitely the most evil looking. Like, compared to Thanos, Darkseid is the most evil looking. Like, that's the difference here. You also have to realize, too, that Thanos was inspired by Darkseid. So you also have to keep that in mind. Thanos was inspired by Darkseid. In fact, Thanos is considered a ripoff of Darkseid. Now, before anyone asks, let me explain. Darkseid made his debut in the comics in 1971. Thanos made his debut in the comics in 1973. So yeah, Darkseid predates Thanos by 2 years. Now, as I said before, Thanos is considered one of the greatest villains of all time, which he is, but you cannot forget about the original. This also makes it because he was also not in the 2017 version of the film. This means that this was the first time that he was ever introduced in a live action movie, and they got his character design like right down to the nitty gritty. Like, he looks as close to how he does in the comics as possible. In fact, he looks pretty much just like his comic book counterpart, if I'm being completely honest with you. Like, he really does. Which, again, let's talk about some of the differences between the theatrical cut and the Snyder cut, okay? So what should we start with? First of all, there were characters First of all, in the theatrical cut, there were several characters that was removed. There were several characters that were removed. I think there was like about 10 characters, at least 10 that were cut from Snyder's original script. But here in the Snyder cut, they're all here. There's a scene in the Snyder cut where Barry Allen saves Iris West from a car accident. It's during a scene where he's trying to get a job, and then he looks at this beautiful woman, and they both stare at each other. Yeah, so when you're watching that, you will probably immediately jump to the conclusion that that's Iris West, and if that is your guess, then you would be correct because it is Iris West. It kind of sucks that they didn't have any other. The only thing that sucks, though, is that they didn't have any other interaction besides Barry saving her from a car accident, but they never really had any scenes where they talked to each other, but that's because it would have been filler if they did, and they can easily do that for a solo film. You know what I mean? Especially since, like, you know, with Aquaman, he never had his relationship with Mera until that movie, and that movie takes place after the events of Justice League. So they like I said, they clearly knew what they were doing here. You also had a character known as Ryan Chowie, also known as Adam. He's a character who works as a STARS lab scientist who works alongside Salai Stone, the father of Victor. He was not in the, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think he was in the original, he was definitely not in the original cut. There was also another character who wasn't in the original cut, and this was a character who was extremely important to Cyborg's character arc, and that was Eleanor Stone, the mother of Victor. Because she appears in flashback sequences to explain why he has his powers, and that's another thing that I liked. The fact that, you know, he was once a football player and everything, but he and his mother got into a brutal car accident. His mother ended up passing away, unfortunately, but Victor was crippled to the point where he could die, but his father, Salai, basically turned him into a cyborg so he could stay alive. You know, that's what I liked about it. You know, they gave him an actual lore, which we will further address in a little bit. But there's also another character who was not in the original. For one thing, Darkseid was not in the original cut, so we pretty much already know that. We don't even need to explain that. But as far as one of Darkseid's followers, however, Desaad, he actually plays a minor role in this movie where he's basically the master torturer and the master follower to Darkseid. He wasn't in the original version at all, but he does play a minor role here. But here's a character that I'm pretty sure you're going to ask me about. Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter was not in the original film, so honestly, this was actually the one that surprised me the most because I was not expecting Martian Manhunter to appear in this movie because, like, I went into this movie knowing full well that it's going to be drastically different, so I didn't want to look up anything about the film that was going to be different. I knew the story was going to be the same, but I wanted to know what was going to be different from this movie versus the theatrical version. And what they do here is that they introduce one of the most severely underrated DC superheroes of all time, probably even the most underrated, Martian Manhunter. Why is Martian Manhunter such an awesome character, you might ask? Because this is a fact, he is the most powerful member of the Justice League. So powerful that he can literally put Superman on his ass. Like, I'm actually serious. Martian Manhunter is one of the only few characters in the DC universe who can go toe-to-toe with Superman. He has so many abilities that he would literally make Superman his bitch. Feel free to argue with me in the comments. I would be very much delighted to educate you on that. So even though here, another thing is that in the theatrical cut, the mother boxes were used as a plot device, but in the Snyder cut, they also included some detail which plays into Steppenwolf's character arc that contains Steppenwolf's actual mother, which was Hegra, and then there was also a reimagining of Hegra as well, which is a completely different character. They're both named Hegra. But that character is Steppenwolf's stepsister in the comics. So with that in mind, that's another thing that also needs to be addressed. The fact that Steppenwolf's characterization is so much better here. Like, he's actually a much more convincing villain. He's a much more convincing villain here. he has actual character. Like, he's not just a bland one-dimensional villain here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he has an actual motive here. You know, he actually has an actual motive here. Like, all he wants to do is, you know, do pretty much just serve Darkseid with his life. You know what I mean? But and not only that, but Steppenwolf also has he does have quite a lot of dialogue here that gives him more character. So that's another thing that they did that was right. Now, even though there are some things about this movie that was cut from the theatrical version, like many of the supporting characters, like Lex Luthor, Silius Stone, Lois Lane, Mara, you know, and Entropy, General Entropy, who was Diana's aunt in Wonder Woman, and it sucked that she died, but you know, General Entropy was here too. But you know. Their scenes, they had multiple scenes that were cut or either reduced, but they still appear in the theatrical release. So if you ever want to see them, which I don't know why you want to do that, because they're not even the single-handedly most important characters in the story to begin with anyway. But I'm just saying. So as far as the backstory for the characters, like specifically for Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg, right? There were several scenes with these three characters that were removed in the theatrical cut, which was a big mistake because all it did was just throw in the characters and expect us to get behind them, but there was no reason. But here, right, they give them actual lore so that way we can know who these characters are and get behind them. You know what I mean? Like when Barry demonstrates his ability to reverse time by surpassing the speed of light, basically the Speed Force, and his relationship with Bruce Wayne being established as someone who is between being naive and excited and someone who is experienced and jaded. But then you also have Cyborg, as I said before, he's the heart of the movie because his backstory is so heart-wrenchingly sad that you can't help but be sympathetic for him. And as far as Aquaman goes, additional scenes, you know, exploring his backstory includes the dead kings of Atlantis' throne, a scene involving him and his mentor Volko, who was played by William Dafoe, and as well as Mara too. They all directly connect to Aquaman. So when you watch any interactions between Arthur Curry and his mentor Volko and his eventual love interest Mara, that dialogue in this movie connects to the solo Aquaman movie. And again, you know, this was something that we need. This was something that we needed in the original version. Even though, you know, Jason Momoa does support the Snyder Cut, he actually defended Joss Whedon's version of the film by saying, "Oh, you know, there was no need. You know, there was no need for it because you're going to see it in Aquaman. It's not an Aquaman movie. It's a Justice League movie." Like that's literally what he said in his own words. That's literally what he said. But as I said, this dialogue with him, Volko, and Mara is actually important because, like I said, it connects to the Aquaman movie, which is great. Now, as far as Superman, this is the most interesting one here. Aquaman. Well, I mean not Aquaman. With Superman, most of Superman's scenes was actually reshot by Whedon. That's the thing. In the original version, many of Superman's scenes involving Henry Cavill was reshot. And the problem here is that they were rescheduled around the time when he was filming Mission Impossible Fallout. You know, a film where he was contractually obligated to keep his mustache. So it wasn't like so much of the fact that he refused to shave it just to be a dick, but it was more so the fact that he had to keep the mustache on because of, you know, his character in that movie needed the mustache. So instead, because Whedon thought it was a good idea to reshoot the scenes, he was like, oh, well, let's have the studio digitally remove his mustache. And that's what they did. And this was around the time when the film was close to being released. So you can imagine how stressful that was. And because the editors didn't have time to properly apply the CGI, it resulted in many of the scenes in the original cut looking extremely off on Henry. Like you can easily see like just how off his face looks because how off his face looks But here, right? In the Snyder cut, you don't see any of that. You know what I mean? The thing is that I believe Zack Snyder reshot most of the scenes here in this movie, but this time, Henry finally got rid of that mustache to play the character. That's the thing. I think that's exactly what they did here. I might be wrong. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But I do believe that in this version, Zack Snyder reshot the same scenes that involved Henry as Superman. But this time, he finally got rid of that mustache so they didn't have to add any awkward CGI to remove it. Because when you watch this movie, you'll actually notice how much better his face looks. Like, there's literally no CGI on his face at all. Like, it's all natural. The fact that Zack did that to him was great. Henry also believed that the Snyder Cut completes his character arc into becoming the true Superman as depicted in the comics. You know what I mean? And then another thing is, this is something that a lot of people also loved about Justice League. Superman does wear the black suit. He does wear the black suit in this movie. Unlike in the original version where he just wore the standard costume. Black Superman was the one that almost everyone was excited for. You know what I mean? Because it's a completely new look for Superman. So they were all excited to see him wear the black suit. So Zack Snyder actually ended up giving him the black suit. And yes, Superman does actually behave like the Superman in the comics. Henry wasn't exactly lying when he said that the Superman in this movie is more closer to the original source material that he's derived from. He actually does behave like the Superman from the comics, but the difference here is that not Henry, but I don't know why I said that, but Clark Kent is not one-dimensional. That's the thing. Because in some of the comics, Superman can be a bit of a one-dimensional character, but here he's portrayed as being more realistic, but it's still a fictional film. You can do whatever the hell you want, but still, Henry gave this character life. You know what I mean? He's not just this character who just believes in good and all that stuff. He obviously has his weaknesses. He's very flawed, and he's human just like everyone else. So the fact that they gave him such a realistic character arc is actually very, very much impressive. In fact, that's exactly how Zack Snyder wanted Superman's character to be. He wanted to portray him in a more realistic manner rather than having him be a one-dimensional Boy Scout. It's Boy Scout. At least that's how Zack Snyder said it. Also, the flashback scene to the first invasion of Earth. This was like I said, this was probably the most important piece that was missing in the original cut. The flashback to the first invasion on Earth during the war against, Darkseid, Steppenwolf, and the Parademons against the Olympian gods and the Amazons and the Atlanteans and the Green Lantern Corps and the humans. You know what I mean? It was altered in the theatrical cut a lot to the point where it was almost important, pretty much not important. However, in the Snyder cut, the flashback is a lot longer. It's a lot longer and shows what happened during the first invasion in every single detail. And then you also have the fact that a lot of the dialogue during this, during the scene, in the theatrical version, some of the dialogue was for most of the characters actually were removed in the theatrical release. And also, when Steppenwolf strikes his hammer into the ground, it creates a glowing red symbol. And in the Snyder cut, it's explained that it's a representation of the anti-life equation. But in the theatrical cut, you literally don't know what that symbol is because the film never explains it. That's the thing. In the theatrical cut, it does not explain what that symbol is. But in the Snyder cut, it explains that symbol that you see represents the anti-life equation, which is a prophecy that Darkseid is trying to fulfill. You see how one major change made a film so much more cohesive? Also, the final battle in Russia, this one was largely redone. This one was significantly different. I mean, this might be the only scene in the film that's completely different. It's definitely nothing like the theatrical cut. So what happens here is that Whedon in the original version, the editing for it was really, I didn't even like it. For some reason, he decided to give it like a reddish type look. You know what I mean? He decided to like kind of give the whole layer like this whole red color and stuff like that. Just looked a little off. He decided to give the roof structures grow out the ground, and a redesign of Steppenwolf's base of operations inside like a cooling tower. And then there's the Russian family that the Flash saves. But in the Snyder cut, however, also, and let's not forget too, in the theatrical cut, before I bring this up, okay, the fact that Steppenwolf showed fear at the prospect of defeat, which caused his parademons to attack because they are drawn to the smell of fear, which was a plot device that Joss Whedon introduced in both this scene and the opening scene with the Batman and the burglar from the original version. But the way it works here is that doesn't happen because, and I hated the fact that happened because it just, like in the original, it just kind of made Steppenwolf very weak and stupid. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't make him much of as an intimidating villain. But here, like I said, he's a lot better. But in the Snyder version, Batman plays a larger role. He not only plays a larger role in the final battle, unlike his role in the original cut, but also in the Snyder cut. The biggest difference being, besides the fight against the parademons and all that stuff, the way they handle Steppenwolf after they took care of the mother boxes was the most interesting part. Arthur stabs him with his trident, and then Wonder Woman straight up decapitates Steppenwolf's head off as he's being flown right in through the portal to Darkseid's home planet. And what I liked about this scene too is that not only did we get to see Darkseid, but it also teased a sequel because, with Darkseid announcing his new intentions, we already know that potentially in the future there's going to be another Justice League movie. I feel like the ending was enough to be convinced that there's more to come. Like, this isn't the only time we're going to see these characters together. Hopefully not. It depends on what the actors feel. I wouldn't be surprised if they do want to come back, considering how well it's doing right now, and they're probably like, "Oh wow, the fans love it. We should give them more," But that's entirely up to them. And I have no ill will against anyone who doesn't want to come back, even Ben Affleck. So now, the post-credit scene. This one was also different. Actually, it's not even so much as different, but like, it was more extended. It was extended. And I'm glad it was, because in the theatrical version, there were some really dumb decisions that Joss Whedon made that made it lackluster. That made that film even more lackluster than it already was. So in the post-credit scene, initially was supposed to tease Ben Affleck's original version of the Batman, which, again, that was the film that Ben Affleck stepped down from, and instead, Rob Pattinson is going to be the one to play the role, so, in that movie. But as far as the post-credit scene in this movie, it's not even a post-credit scene. That's the difference. There is no, before you ask, there is no post-credit scene in this movie, so don't even bother watching the credits. There's no post-credit in it. It's just the 6 parts and then the epilogue, and then boom, film's over. So yeah, this time the post-credit scene is not even a post-credit scene. It's actually part of the epilogue. You know what I mean? So basically what happens here is that, if you've seen the post-credit scene in the original cut, you already know that Lex Luthor and Deathstroke were having a conversation with one another about what to do with Batman. You know what I mean? But the problem here, though, is that when Joss Whedon took over as the director during the production of this movie, the sequence was redone and reshot with Jesse Eisenberg's dialogue, but Joe Manganiello never got to say a damn thing. If I'm not mistaken, you know what I mean. I think his dialogue was actually heavily rewritten in this version of the film. And there was also another early iteration of this post-credit scene that was planned by Snyder, which would have saw Green Lantern characters like Kilowog and Tamar Reeve visiting Superman to further tease the upcoming Green Lantern Corps movie, which hopefully might still happen. And it was also going to tease Justice League sequels. There was also another iteration of this that Kevin Smith first claimed in early 2019 that was later confirmed by Snyder, for the record, that around the movie's release to have been shot, he was actually going to have Green Lantern member John Stewart appear. He was going to have John Stewart visit Alfred in the Wayne Lake, he was gonna have John Stewart meet Alfred in the Wayne Lake house. Do you remember, if you've already watched this movie already, do you remember the scene in the movie where Superman visits Alfred? That was originally going to be John Stewart. John Stewart was originally going to be the one to be in that, but Snyder instead decided to reshoot that sequence with Superman. Zack Snyder also said that he had an early idea of bringing in Ryan Reynolds to play one of the Green Lanterns. Potentially, he was probably going to have him play Hal Jordan, but he never talked to Ryan directly about it at the time. So instead, all these ideas were scrapped. This was for like 2019 and stuff like that. But many of the earlier ideas is that I mentioned before, such as, like I said, Joss Whedon's version, cutting down the dialogue and everything. Instead, what they decided to do with the post-credit scene in the early version of the film was that they replaced, Joss Whedon specifically, replaced that, all these ideas that probably would have helped build more story and potential sequels into a scene where Superman races the Flash. Like really? I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know how to explain it. That was like one of the dumbest moves Joss Whedon has ever made, honestly. Because of all these changes, that was pretty much all the changes that I just addressed. The final battle in Russia is not only is the overall structure of the scene, like the visual look of the scene is better, but also Batman has a bigger role in it. Superman's character arc and the way he appears in the film is a lot better. He doesn't have that dumb CGI on his face, and his characterization is also done a lot better here. The Flash and Aquaman and Cyborg have additional backstories that was removed from the theatrical version, and many characters and there were several other side characters that were cut out from the original cut that should have been in the film to begin with, to build the universe and everything. Because of all these changes, Joss Whedon has been severely attacked by a lot of people, including people who were a part of the film too. Like there were people who were, cast members in the crew. They were all pretty much denouncing Joss Whedon, for what he did on the set of Justice League. Not only did he change the overall structure of the film, but he's also been under some very serious allegations too, with how his behavior is on set. People like Ray Fisher, Charisma what was her name? I don't know. She was from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Charisma Carpenter, I think that's how you pronounce her name. And also guys like Jason Momoa and even Gal Gadot herself were all complaining about how Joss Whedon is on set. So what Warner Media decided to do was take remedial action against him, and they let him go. So we don't exactly know what's going to be up with him in the future. 9 times out of 10, I don't think he'll be making a film for a nice while, considering that he has been under scrutiny for not only changing the Justice League movie very badly, for the worst, but also the fact that he just doesn't have the best attitude on set. So, if anything, it just sounds to me like he's digging his own grave, which is unfortunate, But with all of this in mind, too, it's nice that Zack Snyder took all the time he had to process and kind of come to terms with his daughter's death, who unfortunately committed suicide. And if Zack Snyder is watching this right now, which I highly doubt he is, but if you ever come across it, my heart goes out to you and your family and everything. Like, I don't know why it took me this long to say I'm sorry about what happened to your daughter. Cause like, I remember around the time when the original version when the original theatrical cut came out, and I heard that you had to go through that. Like, I was really sad. Like, I just couldn't imagine what kind of pain you must have been going through during that time. And Zack Snyder also made probably like one of the greatest moves that I ever seen a father do. He dedicated an entire superhero film that he poured his heart out, his blood, sweat, and tears into, and dedicated it to his late daughter. And that was actually the only part of the film where I wanted to cry, if I'm being honest. I actually wanted to cry when the film ended with "For Autumn," because I knew who Autumn was. For those who don't know, that's the name of Zack Snyder's daughter. And when that popped up on the screen, I actually wanted to cry. Like, I'm not even kidding you, because it was just like, it's just lame that she's not here to see how her father's vision of the movie came out, because this is Zack Snyder's work of art. To those who say that Zack Snyder is not a great filmmaker, I would have to highly disagree with you. This dude is great. Do I have to remind you about 300? That's all I gotta say. Mic drop. Zack Snyder is a very, very talented man, and I hope he's doing well. You know what I mean? And I also love the idea of the fact that he made this film in a 4:3 ratio rather than the traditional 16:9 ratio. I feel like that was the best move he ever did, because it made the film very unique. It's actually one of the reasons why I consider Justice League to be one of the greatest films of all time. Like, this is an actual epic. Like, I feel like I'm watching one of those old epic movies from like the last century, particularly, films by Stanley Kubrick. Again, that's what makes this movie so unique. And that's pretty much everything I gotta say. I pretty much said everything. There's also one more thing I gotta bring up. People are gonna ask me about this. Jared Leto as the Joker. Holy shit. To those who say that Jared Leto sucked as the Joker, y'all should be ashamed of yourselves. You want to know why that is? Because Jared Leto is not a horrible actor at all. I'll even go as far as to say he's one of the most talented actors out there right now. Like, do I have to remind you that Jared Leto was Mark David Chapman in the film? What the fuck was the name of that movie? I forget what it was called. I forgot what the name of it was. But basically, in that movie, he played John Lennon. I mean, not John Lennon, I'm sorry. Mark David Chapman, which is ironic how I confused the two, because for those who don't know, Mark David Chapman was the guy who shot and killed John Lennon, and Jared Leto played Mark David Chapman in that movie, and the fatness that you saw in that movie was not CGI at all. He legitimately increased the weight of his body so that he was method acting, so that way he could actually fulfill that role. He wanted a realistic take. He wanted a realistic look for the character, so that he can accurately portray this individual. You know what I mean? Which I think was a good move, but it also caused danger to his health, which is why he had to lose weight as a result of that, because he was actually in danger of developing gout. So he decided to lose weight. But if there was anything that I've learned from that, is that he's a very versatile actor. Like, he can adjust to whatever role he's playing as long as he knows how that character is. Like, if he knows the biography of the character, he will do his best to be as faithful to that character as possible. The way Jared Leto played the Joker here is honestly, I wish that this was the version of the Joker that we got to see in Suicide Squad. I'm serious. I'm actually being completely serious with you right now. Like, Jared Leto's Joker in this movie was fantastic. Like, I'll even go as far to say he's right up there with Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson as the best Joker. I'm actually completely, just in that one sequence alone. If you don't know when it happened, there's a scene in the movie. There's a scene at the end of the movie where Bruce Wayne is having a nightmare and the Joker is in it. That's literally the only scene the Joker is in. He's not in the film canonically, but he is in a dream sequence. In a nightmare sequence, rather. But the way Jared Leto played the Joker here, I honestly wish that this was the way he played the Joker in Suicide Squad. Because the way Jared Leto played the Joker here, if you're wondering why I think it's so great, is because he's playing, he's like, it's like a cross between the classic Joker and the modern Joker. You know what I mean? Like, it's literally a close. The difference here is that, in Jack Nicholson version of the character, is that he was a little bit more lighthearted. He focused more on being lighthearted. Still dark, but lighthearted dark in a way. Like, lighthearted twisted. Heath Ledger's version of the Joker was just straight up dark. Jared Leto, on the other hand, it's like a combination of the two. He's able to differentiate the Jack Nicholson version versus the Heath Ledger version. In fact, he takes both of those versions and combines them into one. Because not only is he just a straight up lunatic who just who still acts very witty like he usually would, but he's just also really dark and fucked up in the head. Like he's supposed to be. You know what I mean? He doesn't act like this. He doesn't act like a man toy, like a boy toy. You know what I mean? He doesn't act like a boy toy like he did in Suicide Squad, where he was just acting like this sexually deprived, grown-ass, insane man who just wanted to hurt other people for pleasure. Or, I don't know, maybe he was a masochist or sadist or something like that. I don't know, because he's just, doing shit like that. I don't know. But here, Jared Leto proved that he can play a great Joker. And honestly, I want to see him do it again. But this time, give him actual screen time. And not just have him show up for just one scene in the movie. Give this dude an actual film. That's not to say that I disapprove of Joaquin Phoenix's version of the character. Okay? First of all, I know some people are probably going to attack me for not giving Joaquin Phoenix credit for playing the Joker, but that's because his version of the Joker is very unique. It may not be the most comically accurate portrayal of the Joker, but the way Joaquin Phoenix was able to handle that character was very impressive. So therefore, I consider him to be more of a standalone Joker. Don't get me wrong, Joaquin is amazing. He is amazing as the Joker. But that's a completely unique Joker that doesn't connect with the DCEU or anything, which is another thing that we also have to address too, which is the fact that Zack Snyder actually said that this film doesn't necessarily compromise the DCEU, and he says that it takes place in a slightly different universe. That's what he said. He says it doesn't affect the future of the DCEU continuity, but that it takes place in a slightly alternate universe. So because of that, there's a lot of speculation as far as how is Warner going to continue from this version of the film. Are they actually going to allow Zack Snyder to make more DC films than just this? I would sure hope so. I really sure hope so. Let's keep him and keep this in mind too. Zack Snyder is an actual DC Comics fan. he very much understands the lore. That's why his version of the film is so much better, because he actually understands the lore of DC better than Joss Whedon ever would. You know what I mean? Like, he actually understands the lore. And not only that, but also Chris Terrio also understands the lore of DC, because he, like Zack Snyder, also understands the lore of DC better than anyone else. So this is a film that's literally made by people who are very familiar with the lore of the DC universe. When you have people who are directing and writing and producing a film who knows the universe of DC, you know you're going to get a good movie out of it. But if there's someone who is only known for writing Marvel movies who doesn't understand it, then you're not going to see any progress. You know what I mean? Again, that was my biggest problem here. Because, you know, the thing is that, to those of you who don't know, Joss Whedon is known for writing Marvel movies. And he also not only did that, but he also wrote some MCU TV shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. You know, he was a writer on there. And you'll never get this too. I'm especially disappointed with Joss because he directed and wrote one of my all-time favorite superhero films, the first Avengers movie. He not only did that, but he also did the sequel, Age of Ultron. So now I feel like, and this is another thing I almost forgot. He also co-wrote my favorite animated movie of all time, Toy Story. Like, bro, how do you fuck up this badly at a superhero film? You see, it was stuff like this, which is why people kept attacking the DCEU at the time. And I was in a group where, you know, people did make fun of DC, or at least tore them under scrutiny for the decisions that were made and everything. But for one thing, like I said, Zack lost his daughter at the time, so he had to step away and mentally process. And plus, they literally hired someone who was only known for writing Marvel movies. Someone who clearly did not understand the DC universe. You know what I mean? But yet they want to give DC all the negative reputation and everything. While I personally define as a person who loves both Marvel and DC because I love them both equally because they're both different, I just hate it when people just kind of like attack. I honestly just hate it when people kind of form a bias and just say very ignorant things. Like, it's one thing if you favor one brand over the other. That's one thing. But it's a whole nother thing when you go on a whole biased rant about why DC sucks, but you're not even giving legitimate criticism. You're putting out a bunch of ignorant bullshit because you've never even bothered to do any research about it before giving your reasons as far as why you hate DC or vice versa. You know what I mean? There's people who actually hate Marvel. You know what I mean? Both of them have had the reason why, you see, the thing is, you gotta understand, Marvel has been around longer as far as making films, like a cinematic universe, you know, not as far as making films. DC actually technically goes way back further, like back in the 30s and stuff. But when it comes to Marvel, on the other hand, when it cinematic universes, they've been doing it. They got to it first, so of course they've been doing it longer. And while I do agree that them rushing to catch up with the Avengers was a dumb move, it still could have worked. In fact, if there was anything that I've learned after watching this director's cut, is that at the time of its release in 2017, it could have worked. It literally should have worked. But because someone was brought into the film who had no experience as far as what this film was going for and what the direction was, that's why it failed. I feel like the failure of the original Justice League was all because of Joss Whedon's fault. It was definitely his fault. You know what I mean? It was his fault. It was the studio's fault. But, you know, at least the studio made up for it. So I can kind of give them a pass because they allowed Zack Snyder to do another cut of this movie, his own. But Joss Whedon, on the other hand, I'm probably the most disappointed in because I should not have expected shit like that from him, but he did, and it is what it is. So sorry that this video has gone on for over an hour, but there was quite a lot to say. You know what I mean? It's just that there was a lot that I had to get off my chest because I've had so many thoughts about this movie that I had to speak it out. By all means, like I said, make sure you guys check out this movie. Like right now, like literally right now. Like stop doing whatever you're doing and watch this movie right now. Literally. Turn it off and watch it right now. If you don't watch it, you're literally hurting yourself. And honestly, if you honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. If you don't want to watch it, you literally have no taste in superhero films. Mic drop. Anyway, let me get out of here. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. Make sure you guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Like if you just got done watching the movie just now and you want to give your thoughts, make sure you leave them in the comments below. And let me ask another question. What do you guys think is going to happen as a result of this movie that managed to surprise a lot of people as far as how good it actually really is? Do you think that there's going to be a sequel or potentially a rebooted DCEU? Like a rebooted DCEU that's still going to be as faithful to the original as possible, like, but still have like the solo films like Aquaman and Wonder Woman, you know, still pretty much connected in this universe? Like, do you think that there's going to be many sequels after this one to further explain what Darkseid is going to do? Make sure you let me know in the comments below. But until then, I'm getting out of here. Leave a like. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Y'all have a great night or a good evening, whatever. This is your friendly neighborhood reptile, otherwise known as Shiz Gaming. Signing off.